The 2025 Belgian Grand Prix. Formula 1 is finally back after what felt like a 500-year hiatus, which definitely didn't make me lose my mind or anything. I mean, that would be crazy. And what a place to come back to. Spa-Francorchamps, my all-time favorite racetrack and the longest on the calendar. Side note, but you know you're at a goated racetrack when every corner has a name, except for the corner with no name. This track of course began life as an actual graveyard, because if you so much as made a mistake, you'd end up in someone's living room. But now it's known for producing some of the best races in all of motorsport, such as 2012 where Maldonado jumped the start and Grosjean almost committed first-degree murder, 1998 where half the fucking grid got sent home like it's an open lobby race or something, or even 2022 where Verstappen went from 14th to 1st in just 12 laps. Ah, those were the days. But speaking of Max, it's also his home race, and Lando Stroll too, I guess. Verstappen has supposedly celebrated this by signing with Merck, as he was caught on a date with Toto in Italy, although some sources say the date did not go very well, with George and Antonelli being, quote, the priority. So, my condolences. To Max fans, that is, because we are so cooked. I say that because if somehow you haven't heard, Christian Horner got ejected from Red Bull, which was possibly the most shocking move I've seen in a while. He was of course replaced by Laurent Mekies, whose career path looks like something the F1 game would predict. Kinda like someone else on the grid, but I can't quite put my finger on who it is. Christian was of course the one who built the entire team from the ground up, so losing him is like an F1 car losing its wheels. It just doesn't work. And I'm not even sure how this affects Max's decision, because he's now on a clearly sinking ship, but at the same time the Big Daddy did say that if Horner doesn't leave, Max would, so I don't know what's going on. But the thing is, it's not just a personnel problem at Red Bull. The entire team is falling apart faster than McLaren can ruin Hülkenberg's podium. I mean, just look at their old-ass wind tunnel. Or goon tunnel, I guess. So the lesson here, kids, is that being racist equals not losing your job, and that showing his flesh flute was a bad idea despite how much your mom says she liked it. On the driver market dumpster fire plot thickens as well, because now that Laurent Mekies is the CEO and team principal, Hadjar gets ever closer to the demotion he so desperately keeps asking for, since they've obviously worked together before, and after all, what's the point of doing well in the midfield when you can do fucking terribly in a tractor instead? But at least he's not alone in wanting to commit career suicide, as Carlos also said he doesn't understand why Red Bull didn't pick him last year. Jeez guys, it's like you don't learn. In other news, Checo Perez has allegedly already signed with Cadillac, who are still edging us, however they will supposedly finally announce him soon after the Hungarian GP, with Mick Schumacher of all people being the contender for the second seat, which I don't buy, like at all, because, well, the rumors about Franco Colapinto being deported after his Silverstone disaster class somehow turned out false, as he got to keep his seat for now. Ferrari, who are also having a shocking run of form this season by the way, decided to schedule a filming day to test their new suspension and allow Mr. Hamilton to, I quote, insert his DNA into the car. If you know what I mean. But it's not just Ferrari, as a lot of midfield teams are also bringing their final 2025 upgrade packages to Spa ahead of the 2026 season, whose regulations are still questionable. But speaking of that, do we have to talk about this guy? MBS is presumably pushing for a V8 engine formula, blah blah blah, it's not going to happen, he's just trying to save face knowing damn well he will be sacked in December in favor of Team Mayer. He even shamelessly tried this exact same song and dance before with V10s. But nevertheless, let's get into the weekend. Since this was a sprint weekend, we only had one surprisingly dry practice session, which is bad news for the teams who brought upgrades, because they won't get to properly test them. Williams had car issues early on with Sainz, and Albon dipping a wheel into the gravel, and then having a moment into the Lecombe section, something the Ferrari sexual also had. Kimi, who's been struggling the past few weekends, locked up into turn 1, with Franco suffering the same. Since Pirelli brought different tires this time around, most teams opted for the hards, which allowed Max to go fastest, along with an imposter. We then had the now routine blocking issues, as Leclerc was blocked by Bortoleto, and Russell almost crashed into Franco. Isaac Hadjar had a moment at possibly the worst spot considering how many people lost their lives there just like that, so he decided it was time to call it a day. Antonelli and Gabi then cut the chicken, and Norris went into the gravel just like Ollie Behrman did, but towards the end, the teams bolted on the softs, which gave us very competitive times, with yet another imposter. But in the end, this was the finishing order. It's now time for the first competitive session, SQ1, which began with the usual traffic jams in the pits. Kimi Antonelli spun and went to the gravel at the final sector, ruining his qualifying. To the surprise of no one, Norris and Piastri were 1-2 almost immediately, although Max was able to squeeze between them later on. Aston Martin's upgrades immediately came into play, which put Hamilton in a tough spot with 3 minutes to go, with him spinning off in the final chicane which saw him out along with Albon and Kimi since they weren't able to put in a lap. And all I'm gonna say is, great job Ferrari, your suspension upgrade gets a simply lovely out of 10. As Q2 began after a short delay, and McLaren went out first and went 1-2 once more, but were beaten by Verstappen and Leclerc this time. Later on, track evolution went ballistic, so Piastri almost got eliminated, whilst Russell and Tsunoda did, as Bortoleto and Gasly set stellar laps, with Aston Martin having absolutely no pace. As Q3 got slightly delayed again, but the shootout finally got underway. Norris crossed the line first and was beaten by Max somehow, but it was Oscar who set a phenomenal lap, knocking them both out of the water, with Sainz in P6 and the Haas cars in P5 and P7 if you can believe that. Gasly had suffered some problems and such he wasn't able to start until a few laps later, but with that being said, the sprint got underway and everyone had a decent start, but thanks to my GOAT's setup, he was able to get Oscar into the Lecombe section, with Leclerc overtaking Norris around the outside, although Lando was able to get him back just 2 laps later. After that... yeah, I might have overhyped Spa a little bit, because this had about as many overtakes as 2021. But such is life with sprints.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
But after a 12-lap DRS train, the race ended with Max Verstappen winning and the 2 Haases maintaining their position, as did everyone else. With the sprint format now out of the way, it's time for the real thing, with some teams, mainly Red Bull, making some setup changes. Q1 started with another traffic jam that ended with Hulk's front wing getting destroyed, and just like in sprint qualifying, the McLarens were instantly the ones to beat, with the Mercedes pair struggling. In the final runs, both Aston Martins were out, along with Kimi, whose misery continues, with both Haas cars going through, which put Hamilton under pressure once more as he unfortunately got his lap time deleted because of track limits, getting him out of Q1 for the second time. In Q2, McLaren were fastest all over again, followed by the 2 Red Bulls during the early runs. In the second runs, Max and Leclerc decided to save their tires as Sainz, Behrman and Hulk failed to get out of the bottom 5, with both RBs easily making it through. Q3's first run saw, you guessed it, McLaren fastest, followed by Verstappen on all softs. Albon almost had a disaster as he dipped the wheel into the gravel, and Bortoleto got his lap time deleted. But in the final shootout, Verstappen immediately made a mistake at the exit of turn 1, which got him out of contention, as Leclerc was able to go faster, but between the 2 McLarens, Norris was the one able to snatch it this time by just 85 hundredths, with Albon all the way up in 5th with a succulent lap. With the grid now set and a fuckload of rain, we arrive at the race, and it was red flagged almost immediately. Which means you had to wait about 5 years until we got a starting time decided, which is actually great because it meant we got to see every possible angle of Lando Norris's mom. Much better than any F1 action, as we all know. But anyways, after 1,000 laps behind the safety car, 40 2021 flashbacks, and 13 more shots of Lando Norris's mom, the lights were finally out. Everyone kept their position initially since it was a rolling start, but a few corners later Piastri got Lando. Hamilton was having a blast in the wet and was able to clear 5 cars in 7 laps. You really should have seen it. Too bad you get MILFs instead. We then had a great battle between Charles and Verstappen, which thankfully ended with no incidents. Ferrari were first in the box for slicks, with Lewis followed by the rest of the grid the next lap, which turned out to be genius for once as he was P7 already. McLaren on the other hand decided to gamble on hards with Norris, with VCarb completely shitting the bed once more with strategy. We then had a train for the next 30 laps where, you might wanna hold onto your seat for this one, nothing happened. Woo! Oscar Piastri of course won by a landslide, followed by Lando and Leclerc finishing the podium positions, with Albon and Hamilton both having brilliant performances and Gabby scoring points. And what a shame for Antonelli, who's truly being tested right now with 6 shitty back-to-back races. And yeah, that was certainly one of the races of all time. But worry not, because Spa will be on the calendar bi-yearly starting next season, so we don't have to wait a whole hour before we get to be put to sleep. But either way, the Drivers' Championship is now even more in favor of Piastri, which is unfortunate for Lando as he had just started catching him again. And in the Constructors, Ferrari finally got to breathe after Mercedes completely choked, whilst they were able to salvage Hamilton's performance. But click on the video on screen to see me explain the fastest F1 cars in brain rot terms, and see you next time.